Excuse me, folks. If you're still eating, please continue to eat, but in the interest of time, we want to go ahead and keep the program going. It's my pleasure to introduce our fixer to give today's presentation, Charlie Johnson.
Thank you, Andre, very much.
I had it in my pocket.
Okay. Let me get started here.
Oh, tell people quick. No, wait a minute. Tell people to take their phones off because we're recording. Click, turn them off.
Could everyone make sure that your phones are off or vibrate or something like that so that we won't hear that? This presentation is actually going to be recorded.
For posterity. Which gives me the opportunity to thank Constantine for volunteering to record this for me, because if it comes out half decent, I want to use it to share with other people. You can't hear me? Oh.
No, I want to. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll talk more directly into the microphone here too.
Okay.
But anyhow, so I really appreciate that, Constantine. And there's another person here that happens to be my guest, and that's Bill Cummins, who came in. He's over in the bar table number 9. He's helped me refine some of my wording in my proposal, and I really appreciate his interest in it. And so it's sort of fun to, out of the box, have my first opportunity to share with you. Now, when I was asked to speak by Chuck Presto, he said, well, first of all, we wanted to kick off the program doing sort of like what other other SIR clubs do, and that is have some existing members give personal biographical presentations, just so that the club gets to know at least one person a little bit more, and do that every month or two, but for like 5 or 10 minute type thing. And so I'm going to start off by doing mine. He asked if I would do both my bio and also present a project that is becoming very near and dear to me to promote, and that is the trying to control sea level rise coming into the San Francisco Bay. So I'll first start though with the beginning almost. That cute kid with a page boy haircut in the photograph and the sailor suit, that's yours truly. About 1944, I guess it was, that picture was taken. So I was born in Oakland, though, back in 1940, the last week of the World's Fair on Treasure Island. And of course, now Treasure Island is going through quite a big change with all that's happening on that island. Those are my 3 brothers. 2 of them are gone now, but we are a very close family. And then I went to Carmine High School, graduated from Woodside Elementary School. That's where I was raised in Woodside. And then went to Carmine for a year, then to Mental Atherton for 3 years, graduated from there. Went to Cal Poly. Between 58 and 62, it was graduated in mechanical engineering. And right on the heels of graduating, I voluntarily joined the Air Force to go to Officers Training School, where I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I had a 90-day training program that made me an officer and a gentleman by an act of Congress, and that's what they used to kid us about. But anyhow, in this photograph here, where the cursor is, that's yours truly. And my crew commander is here on the Atlas F missile. And we were trained to launch an Atlas F missile. And all 5 of us happened to be on duty. This is at Schilling Air Force Base in Salina, Kansas. all 5 of us were on duty in the morning that President Kennedy was assassinated. And boy, did that cause a stir. We didn't know what was going to happen then. My wife had called from the base through the phone system even before this Air Force let me know that we had this terrible thing happen. And but anyhow, so fortunately it all went by the board. We didn't have to stay in a high alert status for very long. But this is the crew I worked with every 3 days for a whole day at a time down in the missile silo about 60 feet underground in the control center. And I have some pictures I'd like to share with you. This is the crew I was on, and we were acknowledged as being the crew of the month one time. And so there's my second name down there is Johnson. Now the missile that I was trained initially on was the LSF. That's the one where I have my cursor here. And it's about 65 feet tall. When it's standing on the lift elevator, would bring it out of the silo to launch it. And those got decommissioned back in about 1964. And McNamara and the rest of the country shut down that system, so they took us guys that still had time left over to retrain us on the Titan IIs. And so the one where the cursor is now is the Titan II. And it's about, with the warhead on there, it's almost 100 feet tall. And that was quite a neat experience. I really enjoyed learning how to operate a missile system. And it took quite a bit of training, but it was very interesting to me. One of the things about the Titan missile that I was on right here, I was at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base at that time, and we were selected as one of the 3 crews to go to Vandenberg and launch a test shot of the Titan II missile. And I was telling Andre that it got within 2 minutes of the countdown, T minus 8, 9, 7, 6, and 2 minutes, and counting and holding and holding and holding. And they finally scrubbed the shot because the range safety officer couldn't let us launch because his equipment wasn't working properly. So the crew on duty the next day got to launch it. I was so bummed, because it was going to be the zenith of my career to be able to launch a Titan II at Vandenberg. But that didn't happen. And I'll make this one where at the bottom here, it lets you know how the missile, the warhead that would normally be on this would not be a dummy. It would be a real warhead of 20 megaton capability. That's a big firecracker. If you consider what Hiroshima and Nagasaki were, those were 1 megaton. And this was 20 times worse. So I'm glad we never had to launch it, but it would have been devastating if we had to. Backing up to when they decommissioned the Atlas F program, I got permission from the wing commander to take all the pictures I wanted to take because everything was unclassified at that time. And I said, "Can I take pictures now where I work?" They said, "Yeah, go for it, go for it." There's nothing secret anymore down there. But this was top secret down here, top secret cryptographic, no less. So we had to be very, very close-mouthed to what we were doing or how we did it. And we had all kinds of communication. This big, tall printer here is the forebearer of a fax machine. And it would spit out messages from Strategic Air Command headquarters as to what we were supposed to do, along with messages that would come on a speaker. And that we would hear about all the launches that were happening at Vandenberg. They were called green dot messages, and we'd decode those, but we didn't have to respond to them. Then the left side of the console here is where my commander would sit. And on the right, where the arrow is now, that's where I had my position. Here's another picture of it here. And so I had to keep track of all the pressures in the missile so that they didn't bleed off and not work properly when you're loading all the liquid oxygen onto the missile and have the bulkhead reversed, the whole thing blow up. which would not be good. It did happen at Altus Air Force Base, and they lost the whole missile complex. And then all these are the error indicators for things in the silo, and I had to keep track of where everybody was moving around in the complex, so we knew where to find them if they had an emergency. Now, since we were sort of in the center of the bullseye for the enemy bombs that might want to take us out, they knew that if they got in nearby, we would be rattled around pretty hard, like worse than an earthquake. And so we had our whole control center was on an isolation system, and these were all around the control center, and it would protect us and also the equipment from being destroyed from the earth shaking if we had some kind of a nearby attack. But they were rather minding big springs.
What's the diameter of those springs, Charlie?
Oh, those were probably about 2 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah. Here's a cylinder, an oxygen cylinder there, so that you can sort of get an idea. 18 inches to 2 feet maybe. And then this is the equipment that would transfer liquid oxygen into the missile at a very rapid rate. We could load the oxygen on the missile within just a few minutes, thousands of gallons. This is looking up from the bottom of the missile toward the bottom side of the cap, where the door is shut on the cap. And that's looking up about 80 feet. And all the connecting stuff. This will be down on the top. Now, this is what was classified the day before as top secret, and I was able to take pictures of it the next day when they decommissioned it. And that's a 20 megaton bomb right there. And you don't see too many pictures of them on a missile in a silo. But that's why I have a lot of memories of babysitting that firecracker.
What is that gray pipe that's going?
That is venting oxygen with vapor off. If you're in the missiles field, you don't want to have it vaporing into the enclosure area because it'll blow up. So you have to have fans that suck out any fumes that come up from the liquid oxygen tank. This now, as I said, we're decommissioning this missile. I was on duty when it was being removed. They took off the warhead already. Now you can see the top of the missile coming up through the open doors. And without the warhead on there, because they took that away, they didn't want to take the chance of that falling off. And up a little further. What they did is I kept going down, we raised the missile a bit, and I'd run back up and take a picture, and run back down, and run it up a little further. And then we finally got it up to the top. And so what's below the missile here, it sits on an elevator, and the elevator at the bottom of the missile has what's called a flame bucket, that with the exhaust comes out of the bottom of the engines, it gets deflected 90 degrees out horizontal onto the ground. And that would, you don't want to go down into the silo. And then the doors were like 20 tons apiece. And this is the actuator that would actuate the door to have it open before you raise the missile and launch it. And then tipping it over, this special rig that would tip it over very slowly. When you think about the skin on those missiles, it's very thin. It's the stainless steel, it's a very high quality stainless steel. It's as thin as a dime, that thin. That's how thick the metal is on the skin of the missile. And of course, it's very strong when it's in a circle like that. So, but it's amazing how thin the metal is because they have to keep everything as light as possible. Okay, so I left the Air Force in '67 and then went to work at Lit Industries in Woodland Hills. For a year, then they were getting low on government contracts, and so my best defense was better offense, and I found a job in the city of Thousand Oaks, a brand new city, and was a charter member of the Public Works Engineering Department that they set up and converted from being a mechanical engineer to a civil engineer. And that's what I ended up doing for the rest of my career. And then I won't go through all of it, but then I ended up when I got my registration, I went up to Pismo Beach. I was the first on-board city engineer in the city of Pismo Beach. Otherwise, they had always contracted that, so even though the city was much older than that, it was a new experience to have their engineer be on staff. And I was public works director at the same time. It was a lot of fun. And then I went to Paso Robles, did pretty much the same thing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the main drive through Paso Robles called Spring Street. Okay, that was one of my projects. I rebuilt the whole thing. And I was the first civil engineer to use rubberized asphalt. That's where they take rubber tires and crumble them up and put them into the asphalt. It makes the asphalt much more pliable. And it goes down very nicely. It's much stronger than conventional asphalt. But anyhow, that time in Paso Robles was very, very interesting to me. And then I went up to Marina, City Marina, for my last 8 years, 35 years in public works, and retired from the City of Marina, just down the road here next to Seaside, Monterey. One of my main, working for that city, it was sort of like having two jobs almost. One was maintaining a city of 14,000 people with all the infrastructure. And then the other was helping with the reuse of Fort Ord, the former Army base, for civilian use. And so I was on a lot of committee stuff that we would figure out how we're going to widen roads and such. And so I was in a lot of the reuse of building up the infrastructure. And there was and it's being reused bit by bit. And you go down to the big area of box stores down there on the former base. And there's a VA hospital there, and a lot of veterans housing and things like that. So then, then I retired and moved out to Mono Valley and Scotts Valley. My mother had lived there before, and so we loved the place that she lived there, and there was no brainer to move to Mono Valley. And we love it there. I've been there 17 years now. Okay, well, I want to go back to starting my other presentation. This is what's becoming very near and dear to my heart, because I feel a real need to share at least something I think is a good idea. You ever had a good idea? You think, why doesn't everybody else get on board with your idea? Well, I'm working on that angle right now. And that is, I've been reading so much about how climate change has affected so much of our environment, one of which is the sea level is rising slowly, but it's documented and how it has already risen like at least 6 to 8 inches since 1950. And so that's not a real high rate, but it's happening. And it's anticipated to happen even faster, more or less asymptotically as it gets worse. And so it could be, according to a lot of people who are studying this, it could be as much as 3 to 5 feet higher by 2050. That's only 30 years away. Now that's more of a doomsday type thing, but it will be, they would say without a doubt, it will at least get 2 feet more by that time. Even that is a bad thing, because with the current sea level, when you have a king tide, when like they had a 7.1 king tide just last couple months ago, and it washes up onto the Embarcadero down there at the lower part of the city, and later on I have a picture of that, I guess. Let me back up here first. This is the model that you see behind me, that I just finished building this, and I put labels on it so you have an idea of what different parts of it are, and I invite you all to come up, if you like, to take a little closer look at it, because actually I made it so those gates operate. I'll just pull one of them just to give you an idea. goes like out like that. Okay, what happens is on the other side, it comes out and meets this one in the middle. They come out and they make a little bit of a V shape to give strength to the gates, because these are very, very big. If you imagine each one of these gates, the biggest ones, where the deepest area is, would be about 80 feet high, sort of like the Panama Canal gates, 80 feet high and 120 feet long, and would meet another one just the same size in the other direction. So that's a very large gate system with an opening of 240 feet. So I'll explain how that operates in just, well, maybe I'll just do it now. Might just be able to do it now. I'm going to use my cursor. If you can see the cursor moving around here, okay, I just pulled out this gate here to the center here. The other one on the right-hand side would come out and meet it at the same time, and it would close off the water flowing through there. Now, we're talking about maybe 27 sets of these across the opening to the San Francisco Bay that is between, if you're familiar with Land's End Park, is there above where Sucrose used to be, above the Cliff House area. There's a park there called Land's End, and there's a point out there, 1 mile rock, and if you look straight across the opening to the bay to Bonita Lighthouse, to Bonita Point, that's about 2.43 miles across there. I have a map that will show that. And you would have 27 sets of these all the way across. As it gets shallower on the sides, they would probably not be so high. They're sitting on the stem wall that would reach down and be connected very, very firmly to the bottom of the ocean into bedrock with very large, strong anchors. And they're about, the footing is at least 10 feet wide, 10 feet thick, and so are the doors. They're very hefty. And they'd be made by prefabbing various ways. They prefab. One of them could be to prefab boxes, hollow boxes that would basically float to get them out to the end. You sink them into place, and then you control their buoyancy by how much air is inside of each one of those, and make it so that the gates are not tremendously heavy. They are actually mostly floating, like it is at the Panama Canal. And you just sink them down on each other, connect them together, and then they would actually, the one I have where my cursor now is just sliding, and the arrows are on the right-hand side. That will slide out to meet another gate coming from another system just like this that would be to its side. And the same thing as here. This one would slide out and meet another gate. So you have gate, and then gate, and then in between these you have the solid structure that they're stored in. And I call that over here, it's hard to read, but I'll read it to you. It's called a stacked gate storage structure. It's a U-shaped structure that would hold all these doors in storage until you need to deploy them. Now you wonder, why is there ones in the back also? Well, that's so you have redundancy. Because anything you build, you have to have a possibility that the first doors don't work properly, they get damaged or something like that. So you have to have a backup set of doors that will close, and you can still have continuity of the system. And each of these U-shaped structures would keep water from going around the end and making an end run. Each unit would be secure into itself. Okay, let's go on. This is what happens on the Embarcadero, where the water washes up there during the king tide. And it's even, I've seen pictures where it's even worse than that. And that also occurs over in Sausalito, big time. It floods out the whole area around there where the Bay Model is. I've been to the Bay Model, it's over there, and it floods up there into the streets. And then you have, and also down in Emeryville, and that's already happening. It's not causing big damage right now, but it's indicative of what's going to get worse. This here is just a part of the San Francisco Bay. It's not the whole bay, it's just the south part of it. But this map, I don't expect you to see it very well right now, but it shows with a red line what 3 feet of sea level rise would do in encroaching on already developed land. And the black line is where if you have 10 feet of sea level rise, how it goes way into a lot of places, affecting all kinds of Silicon Valley developed properties. And then all around the bay, there's 400 miles of frontage around the bay. If you take it and measure it all out, and there's a lot of area to protect, which is part of what I'm trying to obviate. This is not what I'm proposing exactly. I'm going to show you how big projects are done. This is in the Netherlands. It's called the Delta Works Project. And it is a series of gates that keep, this is the inside of the gate, that so they don't flood all their land out like they were for hundreds of years. Now they're able to reclaim a lot of their land and make it useful, and they know it's protected. Then this is an area map, which I have a photo of here, but it's laying out here on the table under these glasses here, and it shows either end of what I'm proposing, where those red squares are. That's 2.43 miles of ocean water between those 2 points that I proposed that this system would be installed. The reason why I chose that point, and you'd say, well, why don't you go where it's narrower? See, it's only a mile across here where the Golden Gate Bridge is. But the thing is, the Golden Gate Bridge is sitting over a chasm that is over 300 feet deep. It just keeps flushing through there with the tide going in and out, in and out. And all this time, it never fills up with sand. It keeps getting flushed out. And that, and of course, when it flushes out, it comes out here, it's creating large sandbars or sand waves out here in what's called the potato patch area. And, but I'm proposing we be able to build across here where it's only about 135 feet deep at the deepest, and then it shallows up on the sides. And, it would be a system that would be able to be closed when there is any kind of a high water event that might damage property that filled up the bay too much. And you can anticipate those things. Close the gates and don't let the high tide come in. And then it also will facilitate drainage of water coming out from the bay. You can trap the low tide out into the Pacific Ocean and make the tributaries work better that are continuing coming to the bay, including Sacramento River and a lot of the other creeks and stuff that come into the bay. They'll flow better because right now when there's high tide, those areas back up and they flood.
So basically, at low tide, you let water out from the bay.
You open the gates before the low tide occurs.
Okay.
And then you let the water go out.
Right.
To low tide, then you trap it. Close the gates. You can't move these gates when the water's going either direction. Right. You have to do it when the water is not going one way or the other because there's too much force.
So you got to have such a steady state flow.
Okay, I'll talk about other stuff here, but okay, there are other attributes of this project that I want to share. That is, it not only helps, like I said, with avoiding flooding, but it also obviates the need for billions of dollars. It's estimated that if all the areas that need to be protected with just a 5 foot rise in sea level, there'd be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of work they need to do to protect highways, freeways, airports, infrastructure, utilities, water plants, wastewater plants. I mean, it just goes, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of buried toxic materials in the land that's next to the bay that it floods, and those materials start leaching out into the bay, and it's a big problem. Caltrans would have their hands full with a lot of freeway that needs to be raised or blocked or have walls around it. Embarcadero, they already expect, their estimate is it might be $5 billion just to protect the Embarcadero area, which is only like 6 miles or 6 miles long. And so there's a lot of cost there. My shoot from the hip estimate of this project, it might be 1 to 2, maybe $3 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But when you consider all the expenses they're going to go to, And all the fighting that's going we go on with environmental studies and political stuff, all this stuff, to do all these other projects around the bay, that can be avoided by not having to do all that kind of protection with a single point control. And that's what I'm trying to put forward. I've already made this brief presentation, I only have 3 minutes then, to an agency that's a state-appointed agency that's called the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Agency. And they are sort of a clearinghouse for all the different people that have interest in the bay. And so I've presented to them. I haven't got much traction with them yet, but I plan to. I've even given copies of my proposal to Sam Liccardo down in San Jose, and I have an architect in San Francisco I've already started discussions with who has built high-rise buildings, but he's been very much interested in seriously considering single point control as opposed to having all this multiplicity of other projects around the bay. So we'll see. I'm not, this is sort of an altruistic thing on my part. My main thing is I just want to get the thing out there and talk about it. I think I have a solution. If there's a better one, that's fine. I wouldn't be offended, just so that they do something. And right now it's pretty much kick the can down the road because we have to take care of homeless people. We have to take care of all the myriad of other things in the cities. They don't want to put much time into figuring out how they're going to really address this problem. There's a lot of serious work going on. I mean, millions of dollars are already being spent on studies. And so before they get too far down the road with their thinking, I'd like to have them reconsider what I have to share with them. So with that, if there are any questions you'd like to ask, and I'll hang around a bit. Yeah, Wayne?
You're going to have 27 of these across a 2.5 mile
Right.
wide area. Now, you say they're left open until they need to be used.
Right.
They're stored. Now, how wide is the narrowest spot? I mean, you're going to get big ships that have to come through this area. Those are going to lay down or something?
Yeah, the area between, when these are fully retracted, the area between this one and the next unit over is 240 feet.
How wide is the wide ship?
Oh, that's much wider than any ship that's on the ocean.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The widest ones are about 210.
Still pretty close.
That's yeah. But you'd have to slow down. You don't go piling through there, 10 knots. But I think there's another whole feature that I didn't tell you yet, and that is there is a golden opportunity to create electrical power, green electrical power, and two ways. One is that in front of this, my mom doesn't talk about that, but in front of these, on either side, on the ocean side and on the bay side, you'd have to have pylons that would be, where you have warning devices and such, like ships know they're coming to something and you need to slow down. And so on those pylons, you could mount turbines that would take the tide water that's going in, going out, going in, going out. That's 4 times a day. Basically, you have the opportunity to catch all the energy going in and out past these pylons. There'd be like 27 of those pylons, and maybe they could have a couple of turbines on one on either side of it or whatever. You could generate a lot of energy there, and they'd be made strong enough that on top of that, if they didn't get too much objection from the public, they could also mount wind turbines.
Turbines.
You've seen them all around the country now. They've become quite popular. A lot of them are being built in the north area of Europe, off of Finland and that area. And they're putting in hundreds of them. And of course, they're pretty far out. They're like 2 miles, 2 to 4 miles or so out in the ocean. But this one here would be like 1.5 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. And so by that time, it really wouldn't be too big. You wouldn't see, it wouldn't be too, you'd be noticeable for sure, but at least they'd be out there and they receive a lot of wind out there and they could generate a lot of power. So that's another opportunity. To avert having the bay become what would be called once these get closed, you have a lot of high water events happening almost all the time, and pretty soon the gates get closed permanently. The bay could, in some people's opinion, become a freshwater lake, and they don't want that because that changes the ecology of the bay. But my plan also includes a large tube. I'm just throwing a number out there, but say 5-foot diameter tube that go all the way from this structure all the way down to the far end of the San Francisco Bay by San Jose, and you keep bringing in seawater there and then letting it go back out, and you'd have that fresh seawater coming all the time. You'd have you could do the same thing up the Sacramento River toward Benicia, and you could maintain whatever salinity level you want to maintain by how much water you let come through. So, and then there'll be locks for the ships. The ships that have to go in and out, you'd have at least 2, if not 3 or 4 locks, so that they wouldn't inhibit the commerce of ships going in and out. So, yeah.
I just saw a presentation on a similar type of effort for Venice, Italy.
Yeah.
And they had a big problem with the floating gates that had silted in underneath, and then the gates wouldn't go all the way down. And it sounds like you have a solution here with the V-shaped channel. That you could keep it clean so that your floating gates could operate. And then there's also the Bay of Newfoundland that does the hydroelectric with tides.
Yeah, it's happening more and more. And when it gets really bad, I mean, like when it's permanently closed, then these gates would not operate at all. Both of them would be shut all the time. You could take the equipment off of them. You don't have to maintain anything as far as equipment. And then fill the angular area between both rows of gates with sediment that they have unlimited supply outside the gate. And they could dredge that in and fill this up, and you'd have, in essence, a dike. And then all operations would have to occur with locks, ships going in and out, and fish ladders for sea life, and fish ladders of probably various sizes. So there are ways to accommodate a lot of the things that we might be concerned about by cutting off the bay. But it's sure a lot better than flooding things out 5 miles back from the front of the bay, and some of them, we'd be very disruptive to many homes, businesses, and enterprise, all kinds of things. Anything else? I have gone over time, I know, because I have too much to try to share. Okay, well, if anybody would like to have a copy of my proposal, just read it on your own, I'll make it available to you with the e-file. Just give me your email address and I'll send it to you. I'm going to do a few more revisions that Bill is helping me make, and then I'm going to republish it again. But this one here went out December 16th, and I'm going to make a more current rendition of it because I thought I've had some better ideas since then. So let me know if you'd like to have a copy of it. Okay?
Real quickly, Charlie, how many locks would you have to have?
One.
With this? Just one.
One, not necessarily. One, be multiple locks, but there only be one. You only need to go from the bay level up to a sea level. Even if you had a sea level rise of 20 feet, you can accommodate that in one lock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have that all designed in my head and on paper and a lot of notes. And if I get further traction on people really want to know how would you build this thing, I have that all pretty much figured out, and I just haven't put it in paper yet. And but I would give it a lot of thought. Yes.
If this were to be built, who would be in charge of it?
Yeah, that's a big question because everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else to take care of their problem. But with the infrastructure thing, the federal government's going to put a whole bunch of money into wanting to take care of stuff like this. And they could go after and get 50-50 grants, type 50% from the feds. They wouldn't have FEMA would have a bigger problem to deal with if you had a major flooding event, and say you had a king tide, and on top of that maybe a surge from the sea. There's lots of things that create they estimate that if you had a big event right now, it would cost $10 billion to clean it up. And that's just waiting for the perfect storm, but I hope that won't happen until they really do something.
Like the tidal wave?
What?
Like the tidal wave?
Well, a tidal, I'm not worried about that, because a tidal wave, it comes and it's done, okay? It doesn't have duration. You know, a tsunami, I think, they don't have a long duration, so the bay wouldn't fill up that much. And even if that event were to top these gates, that's fine. They just let it go over the top. It won't last very long. And then it just retreats and it settles out again. Yeah. Yeah, in the back.
I can also see that this could be a partial solution to our water shortage in California. There's a lot of fresh water that goes out under the Golden Gate Bridge right now. So with those locks, we could manage our available fresh water much better, which we don't have now.
Meaning if we let the bay become fresh water?
Fresh water, yes.
Yeah, there, of course, environmentalists would have a lot to say against allowing the bay to become a freshwater body. But they would rather see you pipe it down from where it is fresh water and use it rather than trying to create the bay to be a freshwater reservoir.
It would be easier to desalinate brackish water than
Yeah.
Cost.
Oh yeah.
Cost.
In fact, you use the energy from the turbines I'm talking about to run the desalinization. Yeah, because it takes a lot of energy to do it. Anything else? I'm way over time, and I apologize for that. Anything else? Because I think we still have our economic opportunity to exercise.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you so much, Charlie. That was extremely interesting. There's some